Welcome to the Remembering Podcast. This is a podcast designed to help you remember who you are. We're coming from Nashville, Tennessee, Western Massachusetts, and Costa Rica today. I am one of your two hosts, OnenO.
And I am KK.
Yeah, so we're doing this one on Zoom. We have a lovely guest that we are super excited to introduce you guys to. Her name is Nina Leone. Is that right? It's not.
Nina Leone.
Okay.
Nina Leone.
I know that you get like, yeah, I've saw you make like videos on your Instagram telling people how to properly pronounce your last name.
It's a sensitive subject. I'm just kidding.
I know. I just wanted to make sure I got it right. So,
absolutely.
So Nina, we're going to have an awesome deep dive conversation with Nina today. Nina first came into my life through Instagram almost a year ago. I think maybe about 9 months or so ago. And
6 months ago.
6 months ago. Wow. Well, we got such a deep connection. It's like old friends. So Nina, your story has been so fascinating to me. I thought it'd be awesome to have you on the podcast and introduce you to all of our listeners and just kind of dive into your story because there's so much there. There's so much to talk about.
I have to mention as well, OnenO not introduced me to you, but was like, you got to go check out this girl's page. It's amazing. She's really speaking a lot of truth. So I started following you. And ever since then, I thought it'd be really cool to talk with her, like just figure out what is your background? What got you thinking this way? Because as far as like you and I have never engaged with each other outside of let's get together and do a podcast. And it just happened to work on the 1 week I'm in Costa Rica for vacation. And I'm like, oh, well, we're going to make this happen. And so I'm really excited. I know I've not met you before and not really like dive deep into who you are or what you stand for, but I have seen the content you're throwing out online and I really respect it. And I know that we're all going to be able to speak the same language because we're all thinking the same way. And so I'm really excited to hear your story as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I think to kind of introduce yourself and just get the conversation going, I want to give a quick teaser for anybody that's listening that this conversation is going to go all over the place. It's going to be super fun. Nina is such a smart and intelligent and articulate person. We're going to talk about everything, I assume, from Corona to Bill Gates to QAnon to like the quote unquote January 6th riots and all of this stuff. So buckle up. It's going to be an awesome conversation. Grab a big cup of coffee. And Nina, where I wanted to kind of open the door with you is when I've been following some of your posts where you talk about your reawakening with God and your reconnection to spirit. So maybe let's use this as like the backbone of our conversation here. How did you go from being someone where you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said you were almost even kind of atheistic.
Yeah.
And then something happened for you in 2020 and it's reawakened and reinvigorated your connection to God. And now everything that you're posting is super imbued with a spiritual perspective. So I'm just super curious, how did that all take place? Like what happened in 2020 for you?
Well, I mean, it was really like the lockdowns and the riots that kind of like jolted me awake. I grew up in a very, very, very Christian home. But, you know, and I grew up going to church. I was in Christian schools, but I just myself, when I was a very little girl, I was like super into it because, you know, that's what you're told, you know, you're like, you know, like, Jesus loves the little children and all of that stuff, which is true. But as I got older, you know, I started to think differently. I had experiences that were very heartbreaking to me, and I couldn't find God in those experiences. So I started to really despise him. And the whole aspect of Christianity and religion, I just completely started to resent. So I turned from it. And then when I was about 19 years old, I had a lot of things happen before then, which just they shaped me, but they just made me bitter, and they left this kind of hole inside of me.
Yeah.
So, when I was about 19, I had this crazy dream that the world was ending. And I was standing in this field and I was in this shack and I was looking, and the shack like didn't have any windows. It was just like this barely standing withered shack. And I was in it and I'm like looking around in this field and there's fire everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And I heard this voice, which was like audibly a man's, tell me to look down at my wrist or look down at my hands. And I did. And there was this big cross on my left wrist. And I heard this like voice in the dream. And it was Luke 9:23, which I had never read before.
Oh, wow.
And the verse is, for whoever wishes to be my disciple must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. And I woke up the next day and I kept looking at my wrist and looking at it. And I looked at it for weeks because I just would look down at it. And I'm like, I got to go get that cross tattooed.
Yeah.
Like I keep looking at it and it's supposed to be there. So I went and got it. It's crooked on camera, but it's straight in person. I went and got it tattooed on myself. And I tried to follow God for a little bit and just life continued to kind of get me down. And I really quickly turned away again and wanted nothing to do with it. Like in that time frame, I was like, okay, like God's trying to reach me. But the experiences I'm having, like I'm losing friends. Like this isn't pleasant. I don't want anything to do with it. And I turned my back on it and I kept moving on in life. And my 20s were just years filled with like really poor decisions and a lot of partying and drama and just, it was completely godless. And I despised God. So I'm not sure I was an atheist, but I didn't want to believe there was a God. I was just content doing my own thing. I was just like, if there is a God, I don't want anything to do with him. So, because, that's how life had, been for me. It was just hard at that point. And then 2020 came along, and right before the lockdown, things had been going really well. I had really reached a place where I was thriving within my career. My dating life was like active and like things were going seemingly well. But right before the lockdown, I got very sick. And not with COVID, but I was having a ton, to preface that, I was having a ton of health issues. And I was literally falling apart. My hair was falling out. Like I had these like giant dark circles under my eyes. Like I was not feeling good. I was exhausted. No one could tell me what was wrong. And right when I needed help, the world shut down. So I'm calling doctors. I'm like, please see me. Like, I need help. And everyone's like, unless it's an absolute emergency, like, which you can go to the emergency room, we can't do anything, which I was scared to go to the emergency room because I didn't want to get COVID.
Right.
So I kind of was just like in this really, really, really low sunken place that I was just feeling broken. I'm like, nobody can help me. The world's shut down. I have no other choice. No one's coming to save me. I have to help myself. So literally overnight, I contacted my friend Deanna, and she's very holistic and eats incredibly clean. I contacted her. I'm like, help me. I got to do something. And overnight, I cut out like at the time, meat, sugar, dairy, gluten, preservatives, and I just started juicing, eating very raw foods and eating clean. And that was very much the beginning of my awakening, because I started researching our food, and I was just like, all right, like we're in this pandemic where there's a huge health issue, and the claim is that like this is all about health, but look at what our government allows in our freaking food. Like, they're poisoning us.
What's FDA approved?
Yeah. How is it that through that whole time of like, we're still even in this phase of like, this is all about your health, but they're never promoting healthy activities or healthy diets? Exactly. It's so crazy.
And they're the creators of the food pyramid, which is a sham. Like, so, realizing this and waking up to like, okay, why is this whole thing about health when it can't really be about health. It can't actually be about health because look at our food system, which was a huge wake up for me. But, I, like everybody else, was still very afraid of COVID for about the first 3 weeks. I was like, everybody stay home.
I remember I was scared too for like a month. I was going to the grocery store. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
And now I look back and it's like, it's incredible that someone could make me so scared that I'd literally like use a shirt to pump gas and like open my car. It's insane.
Yeah, that's the power of the media and those messages just coming in 24/7.
Yeah,
exactly. So, I'm eating clean, I'm working out, and feeling better, I'm researching my food. And then 3 weeks into the pandemic, I was watching something online of somebody that worked for the World Health Organization. And he was like, at some point we're going to have to start going into people's homes and removing them if they have COVID. And I snapped awake and was like, what? Mostly because when I was 13 years old, I went to a therapeutic boarding school out in Montana and then one in Utah because I was having so many issues at the time. One with school, one, with trauma and a bunch of other things. So I was taken at 4 a.m. To a boarding school without knowing I was going. I was woken up from my sleep and I went, and it was a very traumatic situation at the time for me. So when I heard this guy say, like, someone's coming to remove you from your home, I bolted awake and I was like, this is not normal. Like, this is absolutely not normal. Yeah. And I lost a lot of sleep for a couple weeks. I just could not sleep. And I was just freaking out. And I remember like going into therapy on a Zoom call or like the telehealth. And I was like, listen, this is what the WHO guy said. And she was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I'm like, yeah, well, you convince yourself that something like that will never happen to you again. And then when you hear somebody on TV say it, it was a big, bolting awake factor for me.
Totally.
So, and then, a few weeks into April, the pandemic video aired on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I shared it and I was like, what do people think of this? And my friends were cracking up at me. They were like, you're such a conspiracy theorist. This is so serious. How dare you question this? And I was like, how dare you guys not question this? Like, this is absolutely freaking insane. Like, what is going on?
That's the craziest part is like when you started like sharing things, it came from a heart space. Like, I know for me and for OnenO and a bunch of our friends, we're like, holy cow, like, look at this and look at this. And people, same reaction. Like, how could you question this right now? Like, how are you this insensitive? And it's like, no, like, this is me, like, being like, this is not like, wake up. This is crazy.
Something doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like it just doesn't. And like, there's people still allowed to shop in Costco and, go to the stores, like these big office stores like Target, but small businesses have to close. So you're actually pushing people into areas closer together than you would be if everything was open.
Right.
Like, it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And how is it that you cannot get COVID at Target, but you somehow could get COVID at like your local bookstore or something?
Right, exactly. So, I got to this place where it was like, none of this makes sense. So I shut up about it, though. It was like, people are just going to laugh. They're going to think I'm crazy. I'm going to keep it to myself. And then like a week later, or right around that time, actually, our mask mandate came out in our state. Okay. And I saw this post of this kid that at the time was like the boyfriend of a former friend of mine. And he was like, it's insane that people just aren't wearing a mask. And I chimed in. I was like, well, I'm not wearing one. I was like, because the science says that it doesn't work, so I'm not going to do something that doesn't work. And this friend at the time of mine was like, you are heartless. You're a psycho bitch. If I see you, I'm going to cough on you.
Oh my God.
And like screenshotting this conversation and sending it to all our friends. And I was just like, what on earth is going on?
Yeah, what the hell?
And so, I just shut up, and I just, but it was eating me alive. I was just like, I feel like I can't trust anybody. Nobody can see what I'm seeing. Like, it was a very, very, it was just causing a war inside of me and internally. And then the riots started. And
we're talking about George Floyd time now, right?
Yeah.
We're like somewhere around June 2020.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I remember being at a pool party and the
Yeah.
sirens going off, and I was like, what is happening to the world?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it happened at the end of May 2020, early June. And so after I had gotten back from my boarding school, I came home right before I turned 15 and went into my freshman year of high school. And then at the beginning of my sophomore year of high school, while I was still 15, I dropped out. Because I was still, dealing with trauma. I was in no place to sit in a classroom. I wasn't retaining anything, and I didn't care. I was like, I can't be sitting here right now. Yeah. So I dropped out, and then I turned 16. I got a part-time job, and I actually somehow from a friend started to stumble upon symbolism and Freemasonry and the New World Order, and which is very kind of bizarre for a 15-year-old to be very interested in that stuff. But I was reading about all of the symbolism in Hollywood and how we're so heavily saturated with it. Yeah. And I really, really caught like a very good grasp of everything. But I was just like, it's like really fascinating as this is, and how really the world truly is run by symbols. I just can't see anybody ever going with this, Sure. How would anyone possibly agree to go with this New World Order plan? Right. Which I, find out down the road that it was by fear that they got people to do that. But so anyways, during that time researching, they talked a lot about like how they eventually start using anarchy to bring in the New World Order, and rioting, and the police agenda. So
creating order out of chaos. And
exactly. Yeah. So as I started to see it unravel, I was very highly alarmed, and I was like, people are falling for this trap. Yeah. I started to study Black Lives Matter and realized it was ran by actually, like, there's two founders, and they're trained Marxists, but they were trained by globalist white people. So I'm like, this is a globalist plan. Like, this is all happening intentionally to defund the police so that they could bring in an international police force, and, to many other things, especially with the attack of small businesses, which you already saw because of COVID and many other factors. I was just like, something's up.
Not to mention that with all of these riots getting so out of control, it starts to threaten the potential of something like martial law to come about, which would be horrible. And even just sitting in the National Guard is still like pretty extreme,
Right, exactly. So that's exactly what happened. I was at a friend's house one night, and I was driving home, and I sat in my driveway, and I was watching videos of like people, the soldiers in the street just shooting bullets at people's homes if they were on their porch. And I was like, this is just a very foreshadowing of what they actually want to happen down the road. And I just knew, so I just was like horrified. And I again came to this place where I was just like, what's going on? What's going on? And kind of in that moment, I felt like God kind of like reemerged into my life and was like, hi. And
remember me?
Remember me. But in those years in my 20s, after, turning away from God and really hating him, I would kind of lay in bed at night, like maybe like once or twice a year, and kind of think like, is God real? And I'd try to talk myself out of it because it was a comforting thought for me, for him not to be real. But I'd always kind of end up at the same conclusion that, gee, he really must be real, because time is like divided by Jesus's life and death on earth. And we know Jesus actually walked the earth and was a real human, and this must be real. So I would send up maybe once a year this prayer, and I was like, God, like, if you're really real, please wake me up before it's too late. Like, please wake me up. And I'd just carry on with my life hating him, actually. Wow. But when Black Lives Matter occurred, I felt him yank me awake and was like, hey, it's me. Oh, wow. Get up. Yeah. So
I was your Damascus Road moment.
Yeah, exactly. So I just was kind of like in this little moment where I all of a sudden was kind of coming out of this darkness, which was way broader than the current events going on. It was kind of like my own darkness of all of my poor habits and like my poor relationships and, my life, and how I'd really just been swallowed in darkness. for most of, my life. So I felt like I was being called out of that, and it wasn't really me doing it. Like it wasn't just me noticing it on my own. Like this had to be some sort of a divine intervention, because I wouldn't have been capable of doing that, honestly. So I got to this place, I'm like, God's real. So, my life kind of kept going. I was dating this guy at the time that lived in San Diego. So it was long distance. I flew out to visit him in July and was planning on moving there. And then, upon returning home, we got in a huge fight and we broke up.
Oh, no.
So, which turned out to be great. But, I was
blessing in disguise.
Yeah. It was just this raw moment for me. I'm like, where's my life going? Everything's rapidly changing. Like, I'm not who I was. Like, something's going on.
Yeah.
And, by the end of July, I came out to my first friend and was like, I'm not going to be voting for Joe Biden anymore. Like, I had identified as someone liberal. I wanted everyone to have the rights that they wanted. I just felt like, it wasn't my business. Like, and I didn't really care about politics. I was just like, Donald Trump sucks. And I hate him. And that's the default, though.
Sure.
That's the default in this country at this point, because our universities and school systems are all very liberal in our media. So there's a
you
bias.
hate progress if you vote right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's just like how we're all brainwashed to think.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You're an old white man with money, and those are the only people that vote for the right.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's all a bunch of white supremacists, and then maybe a few good people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. Just the ones be allowed to be called good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I got to this point where I came out to my first friend and I was like, I'm not voting for Biden. I'm voting for Trump. And she was like, what? And immediately, no questions asked, unfriended me, stopped speaking to me. And she was like a best friend. Like, I attended her father's funeral. Like I rode with her, like, and just no questions asked, cut me off. And that began to be a continual pattern right through the election. Like, I just was like, I'm not voting for Biden. Don't you see what he's doing? Like, I'm not voting for this guy. And I lost, by that point, I'd say about 70, maybe 70 to 80% of my friend group.
Wow.
But I really wasn't really actively posting at all. I was too scared to post. My Instagram was still completely normal. Like, you scroll back, you can look, it was a normal Instagram. I wasn't really posting. I was too scared to do so. And then in October of 2020, Paris Hilton released a documentary called This Is Paris about her boarding school experience. And I was just like, which was a very traumatic experience for her. She was sent the same way I was. And I was just like, whoa, like, I've been waiting for 14 years for someone to find out that this happens to kids. Like, I have waited my whole life for people to figure out this is the thing. And I never told anybody my story. Like, it was just so traumatic. Like, I just didn't ever want to have anybody know that part of me and think, I was broken or bad or like any of that. So I kept it to myself until she released this documentary. And I was very much like, I have to share my story. Like, there's so many kids still going through this in these schools where, you're not allowed to, your mail is read before you send it to your parents. Your phone calls are monitored. And, there was a lot of abuse that happens within these really horrible schools, and they should all be shut down. So she released this documentary, and I got the guts to share my story online, which was very, I think God ordained that looking back, but it was very freeing for me. And it was the first time I ever really shared anything besides my health stuff, and like how I learned health hacks and all that.
So you put it out through like your Instagram?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was my first time doing that. And everyone was insanely supportive. But after that, I just couldn't stop speaking up.
Yeah.
So
it kind of
set me
opened
free.
the floodgates.
Yeah, it set me free. So the election happened. I believed at the time that it had been stolen. I was like, this is wrong. It's been stolen. It's been stolen. And And then I came across.
Right in this period of time, only because I know a few bullet points of this part of your story.
Yeah.
Can you share what it was like to then start vocalizing yourself on Instagram and all of a sudden actually have a ton of people start to pay attention?
Yeah, I mean, at the time I only had about 800 followers, but it was really all just people who knew me. So it was very, very vulnerable. You know, I was just like, it's all people that are going to judge me and think I'm really, I just didn't want to be seen as a bad person. I'm like I have good intentions. What's going on is wrong, you know? So I became vocal about it, and, you know, people just immediately slammed me down, and family, friends. And it was a very like harrowing situation, but it was also like, I was going to bed with chest pains, but I was like, I have to speak up. Yeah. I have to speak up. What's going on is evil. I have to do it because it's creating chaos inside of me. Exactly. I have to do it. So then, you know, I came across this guy's story, this guy, Danny Presti, who's now a good friend of mine, but he had a restaurant in Staten Island, that was shut down by Cuomo, and he was arrested, and he had undercover cops in all black chase him down, without even identifying themselves. And I was watching his story. I saw it on the news. I saw it online, and he and that Attila's gym owner, Ian Smith, teamed up and started these protests across New York and New Jersey to open up. Yeah. And I was watching these online, and I was just heartbroken. I was just like, this country, like, what's happening is so evil, and people are like, how selfish that these business owners want to open their business. How dare they? And I'm like, what's going on is so evil. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. So I made that Lions Not Sheep video, which was my first public video. Yeah, because that's kind of Ian's phrase that he started coming up with, right? The Lions Not Sheep. Well, he got it from Sean Whalen, which is the owner of the apparel line Lions Not Sheep. Okay, gotcha. So, and he was rocking it. I saw it, and I was like, I identify with that also because, you know, my last name means lion. So I liked it. Yeah. It's like, I like that. So I made that video kind of coming out to just the 800 people who did follow me that were my friends, that I friends knew, you had left, you know, at that point. Yeah. Well, even, I mean, random people I knew from the journey of life, just who followed me randomly. I'm like, you guys, this is wrong. And I made the video, and looking back at it now, like my voice was visibly, or not audibly, it was audibly, like I was trembling, like I looked like I was going to cry looking back. And I didn't feel that way in the moment. I was very scared, but looking back, I was like, wow, I did that. And I was really scared while doing it. And then what happened with that video? This page, what is it called? Truth or, this page, I love the girl who has it, but the name is drawing a blank right now, but I think it's like Truth and Strong or Free North. And she posts all these people who like speak out, or like, she's awesome, the person that has the page. But, she caught wind of it somehow. And then I got like a lot of positive response from my friends, and they were privately messaging me like, you're really brave. Thank you for speaking up. And just random people like you. And then this page from Canada, and all these people caught the video, which really, if you look back, it only got a couple thousand views. It didn't go viral by any means. Yeah. But it kind of opened that door where people, I know for me, because that was the first video I saw of you. And you and I have a mutual friend, and it was our mutual friend that posted your video in her story. And I remember I saw it, and that was actually the first time I had heard the phrase lion not sheep. And but yeah, I remember watching you, it just resonated. You know, you were so real and authentic, and I could tell that you were just a genuine person that was trying to wrestle with all of these questions. And and that's what really attracted me to your video, was like just this authenticity that I saw in it. And so I appreciate that. And that's all I wanted. I was just like, listen, you guys, like, somebody has to say this. That's the thing, is like, I was waiting for somebody around me in my area to finally do something or speak up, and no one was doing it. So I was like, shoot, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not going to wait anymore. I love that spirit, because
I can
Thank
identify
you.
with you with that. Like, I'm just going to wait for somebody else to do it. And then
Yeah.
meanwhile, if you walk into my like office, I look like a crazy person because I'm writing all these notes and
Yeah.
compiling things. And I'm just like, it's got to get out at some point. So,
Right. Exactly. So I did it. I just did it. I was in a salon. I'm a hairdresser. I was in a salon at the time. And I was very outnumbered. It was very like liberal salon. They didn't like I was voting for Trump. I was kind of on these weird odds with my boss already because I wasn't following the COVID regulations. I went to San Diego to visit my, now ex-boyfriend. I wasn't gonna stay put.
Yeah.
I wasn't. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I'm already at odds. I've had to quarantine multiple times, which lost her a lot of money. So I understand her grief, but I'm just like, this is wrong and this doesn't make sense. So, I posted the video. She was cool with it, but then I went to the DC rally, the January 6th rally, right after Christmas time. And, which I was just like, I want to take a stand for fair elections. This country's being hijacked. Like, we're going into a very communistic global reset. And I want to be able to say I did something. So I went, and at the time it felt like it was very all peaceful. I didn't see any violence occurring and they also cut our service during the rally. Nobody had any internet service.
Oh, really?
I couldn't access even like opening my weather app. I have screenshots till this day. I couldn't do anything.
I never heard any of that info.
Yeah, I couldn't. My friends, I was with a group of dudes next to me. No one could do anything where I was, and even walking down to, sorry, I need water.
Yeah, take your time.
Even walking down to the Capitol, which Trump didn't incite violence in that moment. But the thing is like Trump advertised it as 1776. He said it's the next 1776. This is going to be historical. Everyone be there. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go support my boy. Like, we're going to take this election back. Yeah. And but it was very weird because he showed up to the speech an hour late and he was stalling while he was speaking. And my friends and I were like, why is this guy stalling? Like, what's going on? We just got this bad vibe, but we still went to the Capitol. And honestly, I don't regret being there because it was still one of the coolest experiences of my life, even though I now see it as a false flag operation because I've never seen anything like it. I can't explain the energy. So I took it as like, this is a very good thing. I didn't see anything violent until all of a sudden my service on my phone turned back on and I had hundreds of freaking people, like not hundreds, it's an exaggeration. I had like 100 people blowing up my phone, calling me, cussing me out. Like, you're a terrorist, you're an extremist. Whoa. How dare you be there? Because I had logged on the moment I got service and I was like, this is like the best day of my life. But the media was showing everybody breaking inside and smashing windows, which I never saw.
And you had no idea about.
Because there was like a million freaking people there. And like, everything I saw was peaceful, and also all the cops. Right. And I was at the Capitol building. Like, I got close enough, but all of the cops were standing idly by, letting people up. They weren't doing anything. So I was like, oh, like, everything's peaceful up there. Like, they threw tear gas like once or twice, but I thought like, oh, maybe something, they're just trying to discourage people from getting close to the doors, not knowing anyone had even broken in.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I did not. I love hearing this side of the story because the media and the people have been brainwashed to think anybody that was there is a complete idiot and a terrorist and hates the government and hates progress and hates woke culture, the whole thing. It's
right. Well, Candace Owens pointed out very shortly after that they stole that same play from the Reichstag fire in Nazi Germany when they lit the parliament on fire, and then blamed it on the communists, and then which led them to censoring more and banning journalists that had opposing views and bringing it into a complete totalitarian state. Yeah. So it was it's an old play out of an old playbook.
Totally.
Absolutely.
but it was incredibly traumatic for me because I came home. I had to leave my job because everyone was calling me an extremist. Nobody wanted to really work with me anymore. Wow. And because we had been closed for vacation the week of the
January 6th.
rally. Yeah. So I just went, I drove down. I'm like, it's my time. I'm not asking for permission. I'm not a slave. Yeah. So, but then she was upset. She was going to have to make me quarantine again because I was selfish and unmasked in a crowd. And, I was just being called an extremist and unhinged. And, it was very traumatic because I was all of a sudden being called like a terrorist and an extremist when I really just wanted to take a stand for freedom and for a fair election that I had believed at the time was stolen. Yeah. And I was going to bed with just knots in my stomach. I was nauseous for like 2 weeks. I just wanted to, and I never advertised it as this. I just tried to stay strong, but I wanted to just disappear. It was very difficult, but it was really in those moments where I'm like, all right, I have to leave my job. This is already a new salon to me, so I don't even have a full clientele right now. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to change careers because I'm not going to survive? Yeah. And God just kind of was like whispered to me into those moments of darkness and was like, surrender. And so it would like make me cry even talking about it. But like, so I did. Yeah, I did. I was just like, I don't have any other choice. I'm in limbo. I don't know why my story in my life has taken this radical shift. I don't know. I didn't ask for any of this. Like, why am I? And I'm sorry I'm dominating this conversation. I'm wrapping it up. But,
I'm loving it.
This is what we brought you on for. Your story is amazing.
Thank you. So I did surrender, and my boss at the time was like, take a month off. You need to get it together, and I'll pay you. Just take a month off. I texted her and I said, hey, I'm not going to be accepting the pay. I don't want to put you out of your ways more than I've done. I'm just trying to do a good thing. I'm going to be leaving. Thank you for all you've done for me. It's not personal. This is just a conviction I have. And I said, and she was like, okay, that's cool. Like, if you want to me to send like your clientele phone numbers over and stuff, I'm happy to do it. And I was just like, or to your next salon. And I was like, honestly, I'm unemployable right now because I'm not going to be told what to do. I have to keep going on this journey. This is what God's, impressed in me. I have to do this. I'm going to DoorDash. And,
wow.
So
good for you.
So I was like, I'm going to DoorDash. I don't want a boss. I don't want to be told what I can post or what I can believe. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut the loss or count the loss. I'm just going to do it. Yeah. And maybe do some hair on the side because my regular clients were freaking out that they had to find a new stylist. So I was like, I'll do home visits. Do you know, not since that first week, I've had to do one door dashing session, not one.
Wow.
Not one. Wow. I've been able to bring in all the money I need from just doing hair alone, and I've gotten a whole new clientele.
Heck yeah. That's so inspiring.
Yeah.
Good for you.
That's amazing.
Just stepping out on that limb and being totally supported.
Yeah, well, it was just God providing for me because I surrendered, honestly, which was a very scary thing to do for someone that likes control, especially. But so, I kept, my follower list crept up to like 900 something. I started posting these breakdowns of like movies and how they've conditioned us. And I started posting tweets. And
I've got one of your tweets here that went pretty viral.
Yeah. Yep. Well,
I'd love to read it at some point. I don't have to do it right this moment, but we're going to read that one.
Yeah. I give me 2 minutes and I'll let you read it for
Take
sure.
Your time.
So 2 of my tweet series went viral. The first one was about the Great Reset and BLM, which DC Drano on Instagram got a hold of and reposted, and it went viral. Yep. And then, so that by Easter crept me up to about 1,700 followers. And then I came out with the It's All Dead to Me posts, which you're about to read, which launched me to about 3,000 followers right after Easter. And then I right now I've hit 14,000.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
you're just blowing up because you have this way of just speaking. Like the way I interpret your energy and your language is definitely like a lion. You're like, in the Bible, they kind of talk about truth being a fire sometimes or like a sword. And
yeah.
you're an embodiment of that. Like the words that you choose are always so articulate, and they have this like the cleansing, burning fire element of truth.
Yeah. That's all I wanted to do. I'm like, I was kind of looking too for a platform like mine, and I couldn't find it. So I created it, and it took me a while to like, I started praying for courage. I didn't have any, so I started praying for it, and God gave it to me. I didn't do it on my own, Also, too, it was in those months following my surrender where all of a sudden my mind was blown open to how real God was. And I all of a sudden started to like mourn a lot of the things I'd done in my past and the way I treated people, and which was God doing that and like waking me up to like, this is who you are. You need to like change and follow me, and I'm going to make you a new person. So, which is, I'm really still far off from being who I'm called to be, but I'm trying to get there.
Yeah. Well, clearly your journey has been taking you into some pretty amazing places.
Yeah. Well,
it's pushing you to grow and change.
Right.
I want to hear this tweet.
Oh yeah, you go for it.
Yeah. So this is the tweet, and I see the date on here is from April of 2020. Is that right? Is that when you posted this?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I'm just pulling it up here. So Nina says, it's all dead to me. Celebrities, sports, concerts, bars, travel, none of it matters anymore. During 14 days to stop the spread, which turned into 7 weeks of lockdown, I would have done anything to go to a concert. But now I count it as a loss. It means nothing to me anymore. The people I once idolized are puppets. The politicians I once applauded are embedded in their own interests and have sold us out. The companies I once shopped with are colluding against us. The celebrities I once looked up to, now I can't look at anymore. It's all gone. 2020 has changed me, and I don't miss any of it. I only wish I had ditched all of these false idols sooner. The truth is that I'd give up any of these things sooner if I had truly understood, but now I do. And it set me free. I'll walk the narrow road with my eyes fixed on the finish line. None of what is here matters. The earth and everything here is temporary. There is life after death, so I counted this all as loss. 2020 was the year that separated the wheat from the chaff. There are still people straddling the line. Soon they will have to choose where they stand too. And then you quote from Corinthians 9, verse 24 that says, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. And then Nina continues saying, if disagreeing with what is happening causes me to lose my seat at the table and to lose my status in society, I'm willing to sit alone. First of all, just to interject right there, that's such a powerful statement. Just like, wow, inspiring. Nina continues saying, everything here is passing away. There is no going back to normal. This is a hard pill to swallow. The new normal is here. The new world order is here. But I have hope. My hope isn't in the United States of America or any president. It's in God alone. I see many people worried about what freedoms they'll lose by not taking the experimental jab. They think that this jab means things will go back to normal. Things are never going back to normal. So I fix my eyes on Jesus. And then Nina finishes with a quote from Matthew 7, verses 13 and 14, which says, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. So inspiring. And I know that tweet went so many different places. There's so much to unpack from the tweet. But I would love to hear your story of what happened with this tweet. Like, what was the reflection and the spread of this?
Honestly, I didn't know that one would do so well. I was just like, I'm watching all these companies support BLM and tell people that they can't go to concerts or can't come to a football game without the vaccine. And, even Starbucks has a Frappuccino series right now called the Passport series. And I'm like, all of this stuff is happening, and all of these companies just have they're bought out. They all have their own interests. Our leaders, they don't care about us. Like these celebrities, like I was about to go to a Halsey concert. Like I'm like, I don't care about any of these people anymore. They don't care about us. Like, look what they're doing, and they think they're doing a good thing, and this is so wicked. I'm like, I don't even resonate with it anymore. I don't want to be there. Like and then people were calling me like, oh, there are a lot of people resonated with it. It blew up. It went viral. But there was also a lot of people, like my ex-boyfriend, calling me. He's like, you're such a doomsdayer, and that's so negative. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I got my life back. I got my life back. These things that like I was spending all this money on for these little temporary pieces of happiness that really never filled me. They don't matter. You know, like I have other things now that matter so much more. And these things are just these temporary illusions to keep us distracted and bought out, so we never notice what's going on. And these people have all, thrown us under the bus, and I'm out. And the end goal is salvation and Jesus, and that's where I'm walking.
Like, you literally came out of the fog, and I think where people don't realize that once you exit, we always, like, it's kind of cliche to say, oh, exit the matrix, because that's what we've all been saying forever. But in a way, it's exiting the matrix. It's literally walking outside of the fog, and then that is where peace and joy and contentment and simplicity and all of these things that really give our life meaning and humility, all of that stuff exists outside of what we are taught and indoctrinated since childhood to think is important. So, and when people say, oh, you're a doomsdayer, or, we just want to enjoy our life. And it's like, you're not enjoying life, though. You think you are. You're getting temporary, like, heroin injections in your arm, and then you got to keep going back for more and more and more, because you don't know what peace or joy is at all.
Exactly. It's just all meant to keep you consuming and needing more and more and more with a thing, that hole that can never be filled.
Yeah, not to mention that we let all of these parts of society that we call entertainment, whether it's music or Netflix or movies of any kind, they program us with opinions. And then I think in 2020, it was such a big wake-up call for so many people that I think one of the things that resonated with people from this tweet is that this idea of like, I'm over this. I think so many of us actually feel that way, and we can see through that bullshit programming, but we're unsure sometimes what to do with it. We're unsure if our friends and family see it and think and feel the same way. But I think a lot of people are really resonating with this and just being like, this is bullshit.
Right. Exactly.
And I think a lot of people will resonate with this, and this is for another topic, but I kind of had the same come back to Jesus and God moment in 2020 as well. And it was shocking to me that I'm back in that camp, because I never, ever thought I would be. But, I went and bought myself like a cross necklace to wear. Not that I think that
Me too.
God, look. And like, it's not that I think, oh, this is me, like, I'm taking up my cross daily, like it's some like drudgerous thing I'm doing. It's like, this is my way to show the world, like, this is the team I'm on. And it's team, like, goodness and light and embodying our divine image of God that we've been creating in. There's a saint that I recently discovered, and he has this.
Which saint?
I think his name is Saint Ignatius. And he said, God became man in order that man can become God. And we do not embody that at all as human beings, because we're slaves here on earth. We are literally slaves, and we are just being led every single day through media and through this narrative of like, oh, you're kind of like, just do what everybody says to do, because then you'll be accepted by the masses, and then you'll have friends to sit at the table with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I like that JP Sears has his podcast is called Free Range Human. And I just love that idea. I think it's so accurate.
I love that.
It's so accurate to what we are.
I wish I could steal that. Like, I identify as a free range human. Those are my pronouns.
Totally.
I identify as this. Okay, I don't want to like steal the show or anything at this moment, but I do want to talk to you kind of about the media, the movie stuff, because I've been tracking that for a while as well. And so 2 movies I've recently watched within the last 2 weeks that are forefront of my mind right now. And it's Soylent Green.
Soylent Green?
Soylent Green, thank you. From the 70s, has Charleston Heston in it, and it actually takes place in the year 2022. So it's like way in the future. And the purpose of it is to give people soy to dumb them down and to comply. You got to watch it. And so they're actually taking the red meat out of people, like people that are older that remember life as it used to be. Like there's this one character that cries tears because he hasn't seen a piece of red meat in so long. And I mean, it's wild. So watch that one. But
and also the soil. Are you getting also to the point in Soylent Green where they discover that it's people?
Oh yeah. So that's
don't forget that part.
Yeah. So the whole part of it is like older people are like going and getting euthanized because they're like, this isn't the world I remember. This is not life. And so there's a lot of people that are dying just because of overpopulation in these cities. Well, it's not overpopulation. It's that people are like just literally living and crowding themselves in these metropolitan areas. And so it gives off this illusion that there's nowhere else to go. So people are starving and they're scared to leave the city because that's where they're protected. And anyway, the whole end of the story is that they're literally feeding the dead people to the people and mixed in with soy.
Yeah, the famous moment is the lead character finally finds out that Soylent Green is made of people, and he goes, Soylent Green is people. It's people.
Wow.
And then, it's wild. Yeah. Okay.
Though, the thing too about that is that's exactly one, as you know, what's happening. But 2, that's the reason they're trying to ban meat is because meat doesn't belong in a city. It doesn't belong in areas like that, which they're trying to push people into these smart cities. They don't want people in the countryside. They don't want people free. And meat has just no part in this smart city utopia that they're trying to make. So they got to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly. Did you guys see the recent meme that it's like a research article where they're in Japan, they were feeding a male catfish only soy, and it turned him female?
No way.
Yeah, they've been doing that a long time.
Whoa.
Yeah, wild shit like this. Like it's totally like, it doesn't surprise me that we had this culture of toxic masculinity, like rising up, 5 years ago, like don't be a toxic male.
Yeah.
And now it's like the feminine male archetype is what is considered beautiful and hot and to be desired. And it's like, as a female, I'm like, what? I do not consent to this at all.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the other thing I wanted to bring up really quick is I'm on the plane yesterday. We get free movies on the plane. And so I'm scrolling through, and I watch movies now to see if I can pick out the predictive programming in it. It's so freaking fun to me now. And the one that came up that I've never seen in my entire life, which I've been dying to watch, is Close Encounter of the Third Kind.
Classic Steven Spielberg.
Exactly. Okay. Steven Spielberg. And, we've got this whole alien agenda on the horizon. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to watch this and just see if I can notice the predictive programming. Okay. Real quick. There's a group of people who are intuitively led through visions and through drawings to a certain demographic, this region of the world that the aliens are going to interact with humankind on. Well, the government finds out, they make all the people leave, saying that the air is dangerous. So everyone starts wearing masks. But the people who are led there intuitively take the mask off because they're like, we can see through this. This is not real. they don't die when they take their mask off, and they actually have the ability to go see what the government's hiding from the entire population of the world. And I'm just like, okay, I thought this was an alien movie, but now I'm just seeing like how this plays out across all agendas and every narrative that's happening right now. So
this makes me want to cancel my clients tonight and just watch movies.
Totally.
So fun. So for me, like, I would love to talk maybe like, what were some of the movies that woke you up, or that you were just like, this is hitting close to home? Like, cause I noticed that on your Instagram is like, this is something in my life that's been kind of relevant. So
yeah. Well, I honestly think in like most mainstream, movies produced through like, through Hollywood, you can find symbolism if, you're trained to know what symbolism is, what it means. Then you have this whole, especially with like numbers too, you have this whole other language that most of the world doesn't understand. So it's really easy to pick things out. And then it's also really easy for everyone else to call you crazy. Sure. Yeah. But, the Hunger Games, Mad Max, those were really big ones. And a lot of like music videos. I mean, even with Busta Rhymes, he predicted the coronavirus. He predicted 9/11, and he's now predicting the mark of the beast, which is why I know it's about to happen. I mean, that's not why I know, but he was right on the money with the other two. He's going to be right on the money about this.
Okay, I'll look that up too, because I haven't seen
Yeah,
that.
he has some crazy video about like these. It's like takes place in a church, and there's like a cafe.
Yeah, it's called "The Prophecy Shall Be Fulfilled."
Man, yeah, that I saw
the mark of the
some
beast.
of that video. It is heavy. It's interesting.
And it's funny too. Well, not funny, bad word, but they're wearing masks when they like show who the priest really is, and they flash in that he's like evil and he's wearing a mask. And Busta Rhymes is his album is called Extinction Level Event. Ooh, what kind of extinction? That big of a level of an event, what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Which this is a depopulation event we're on the fringe of. It's already began, but I mean, him calling his album that, and then the prophecy shall be fulfilled. It's like we are in the end times. So there's many. Those are just some, and there's a lot. As I said, I became really enthralled in that language in high school. It's just a good way now just for everyone to call me crazy. But like, I posted that Captain America one. Everyone was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, I can see clearly. I mean, I get it. Like, people can say like, that's a reach. You're grasping for straws. But I also had to do that when proving COVID was a scam. So I'm like, I can see what I can see. It's not my fault that I can see it. I'm just sorry you can't.
Yeah. And I mean, Hollywood, it does take people a while to wake up to this realization and to eventually see it. But Hollywood's been doing this forever. And it's been fascinating to me as somebody that grew up Christian. And I'm also very, very fascinated with symbolism and mythology.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell is like one of my favorite dudes on the planet, even though he's not here anymore. But I started seeing very clearly almost 10 years ago, maybe even a little bit more, through my involvement with Hollywood and also just having a spiritual awakening and seeing the movies and the symbols. It's like, there's so much satanic symbolism and Luciferian influence in this stuff that at a certain point, my rational brain can't make sense of it. And the only thing that my rational brain can make sense of is that this is on purpose. They're using these symbols on purpose.
Yes.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
And it's not just this kind of flippant, like, oh, the goth kids are also into Satanism. It's like, no, these people, they run Hollywood and then they're Satanists. Yeah, and they imbue their symbolism just right there in plain sight. And then the reaction that they're banking on is that most people just say it's entertainment.
Yeah,
exactly. Or most people just shrug them off and say you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
They don't have the ability to chew on that idea though, because there's not the interest isn't there to say, well, what does that symbol mean? And what's the history and the foundation? And what did the people of that culture think about it? And why is that symbol being used right now? Is there some type of like being downloaded when we're watching stuff like this? I I think I emailed to you both. There's this Jonathan Pajot. He's this podcaster I like to listen to he has something called the symbolic world. He's been studying symbols forever. And he's an Orthodox priest or something like that. But he's always talking about symbols mean more than language does. And then there's this other kind of new world or new age thinker named Manly P. Hall. I like him, but I know he was a Freemason, so I'm kind of sus now about exactly his agenda was. But he does have this quote, and I'm going to say it, which we've got to study guys like him that were in these deep occultist realms to understand what is being. You got to fight fire with fire.
That's how I feel. I posted a Stephen Hawking quote the other day, and I'm not saying he's a good guy, but it was a good quote. It was wise words. And I had all these people that are Christians being like, how dare you quote him? You're not a real Christian. And I'm like, first of all, it's words. Second of all, I've learned from everybody.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
They're words that were they got me through the worst part of my life. I intentionally used them. I could have removed the name and you wouldn't have even blinked.
Right,
it had a good energy about it. So Manly Hall says, symbolism is the language of the mysteries. By symbols, men have ever sought to communicate with each other those thoughts which transcend the limitation of language.
Yes.
So we are fighting. These symbols is taking the fight to the next level. And for those with eyes to see, we are going to see this. And so how else do we communicate what we're seeing in the symbolic world, except through language to people who are not seeing it? But then it's not translating at the moment.
I'd love to interject at this moment then. We haven't been able to talk about this on the podcast yet, and I think this is the perfect moment. The Lil Nas Satan shoes and the music video.
Yeah.
This shit was wild. And what's wild to me is, of course the video is shocking and wild, but what was more wild to me was watching society react to it and watching how there was a large group of people like ourselves that are looking at it from this extremely horrific, what the fuck is this? Why the fuck are you doing this? And, because Lil Nas, he's even admitted his own demographic is mostly children, I think ages 9 to 15. And then and he was kind of entered into the public consciousness a few years ago, being country pop, hip hop, country pop.
Yeah.
Billy Ray.
And then next thing you know, he's literally getting, excuse me out there, but I'm just going to say it. He makes a music video where he's literally getting screwed in the butt by Satan and giving him a lap dance. And then he puts out this satanic shoe line that has literal drops of human blood in it. He puts out 666 shoes only. And it's so fucked up, and uses the upside down pentagram and all of that stuff. The reason I would love to unpack it at this moment in our conversation is that this is something that it doesn't even require detective work. And yet so many people are like, no, you're reading into it. It's not that serious, And it's people just don't realize.
They think we're yeah, exactly. I'm well, first of all, it's meant to have shock value. So why are you getting upset that people are shocked? It's total it's really wild. It's almost like gaslighting, first of all, but secondly, as far as those shoes, they're cursed. Okay, they're cursed. You have human blood droplets in them, and there's a satanic curse over them. Those shoes are cursed, so wouldn't want to be me to put them on, because people laugh and they're like, it's just a shoe. And it's no, but it's going to manifest into something a lot darker in your life. So have fun with that one. But I mean, that video was loaded in pedophilia symbolism, biblical symbolism. And really, I mean, it's grooming little kids. You're grooming your audience. And it's
messed up.
It's really disgusting. Yeah, it's messed up.
The fascinating part of that video is that, and that podcast I sent you both to listen to about it talks about this, because I never thought about it, but it's actually just inverting the resurrection story of Christ. So where, he is proving, well, I don't want to be in heaven, so I'm going to go down to hell, whatever that looks like, which is so like old world
the Garden
thinking.
of Eden first.
Yeah, he starts in the garden.
Oh, that's right, the Garden of Eden. So, and it's all about him individually becoming God, and it's like, because of this is everything he wants to do. And it's never going to satisfy us individually to have a life outside of our Creator, to try to be on our own. Like, why do we want to be on our own? And why are we trying to groom, as you just said, children to think that they don't need anything outside of themselves to help them? Like, we're completely, anything related to the psyche or the consciousness, we are removing that as something spiritual, and we're making it into only science. And when you only look at something scientifically, then it's only logical, and there's nothing intuitively involved into that.
Yeah, it's been science has definitely been bastardized.
Oh man, the science thing.
As far as like what right now, as far as like why they're trying to mold children into accepting this gender confusion and telling a 3-year-old that they can, without their parents' consent, go chemically castrate themselves and pick their gender, which is going to daze and confuse them and lead. The suicide rate in transitioning is already over 40%. Don't you think it's going to skyrocket when you add kids into the mix? It's evil, it's wicked, and then you're teaching kids all of this other stuff. You're grooming them, but they're trying to, one, destroy the nuclear family and blur gender lines. Okay, they're trying to depopulate. 2, they're trying to reintroduce pedophilia as normal,
which is unbelievable.
Yeah,
which is like what should make people. You've seen the insane rapid increase of evil over the past year. There's no question it's satanic. This is Satan.
Well, I just saw where somewhere over in the UK they're showing children without the parents' consent masturbation videos. How to masturbate properly.
I get sick.
In the first grade.
Fucked up.
There's sex offenders. It's like what? Like if you did that 10 years ago and you went and said, Mom, this grown-up showed me porn, they'd have to file as a sex offender.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so messed up. It's so wild how far
so
this is
wicked.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wicked. It's so that's just another thing of my eyes being so wide open.
Yeah.
We're seeing I don't know if you guys saw the other day in London, all those women in the red satanic dresses and veils marching through the streets. And I'm like, this world is been tilted off its axis. It's upside down.
That was a parade for the G7 summit, right?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. I think that's what caption I saw.
I was just reading about that this morning, and nothing concerns me because I know how protected I am. And I know that this world is not forever for me. But I do know that if I don't speak my truth while I'm here, or at least live my truth while I'm here, what camp am I signing up for? So when I'm reading about all this stuff and I'm trying to learn, what is the other objective? I'm reading the Ray Kurzweil book right now called The Spiritual Machine. And it talks specifically in there, this was released in 1999, about exponential growth. And how exponential growth, when we start rolling out with these new agendas or these new thoughts, it's a slow burn, but then once it catches fire, it's out of control. So it's going to get to a point where it's so out of control, we can't control it anymore.
Right.
Nobody will be able to control it anymore.
No,
that's what they want. And they're creating this whole narrative with the Great Reset and just
they're literally creating revelations.
Right.
Absolutely
happening. That's the thing too. I arrived at that point a while ago, but really in the privacy of my own mind, and I got to a point this week where I was just dang, everybody's so fooled with this 2-party system. And now I'm telling people the person you think that's come to stop it isn't going to stop it. He's part of it, which has completely altered my, my platform. But I'm really, really, really glad.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask you about that. And I'm going to start this topic by saying, I think this is maybe where we should wrap up, but we can spend another 15 minutes on this. It doesn't have to be fast because I think there's so much to talk here. Yeah, let's go another 15 minutes or so. But I do think that this is really fascinating because I see this. Let me try to highlight what I see in the spiritual world. There's like if you imagine like a Venn diagram, there's a crossover of the spiritual world and this like questioning, this general questioning world where people are questioning the Great Reset and all of this.
Yeah.
What I see in there is that I listen to somebody like Krishnamurti, and for those that don't know Krishnamurti, he's an amazing yogi lecturer that became very popular in the West. He's from the East, very popular in the West, somewhere around the 50s through the 70s. And what he articulates so clearly is that spiritual awakening, in order to get back to this deeply connected spiritual place, you must uncondition your mind. You must recognize that every single element of the world around you, from your parents all the way up to the president, everybody has been conditioning you. And you must get out of that conditioning. And so when you get out of that conditioning, the way out is through critical thinking, asking critical thinking questions, and constantly just identifying the parts of you that have been dictated to you and handed to you, and realizing that none of that story that you believe about yourself is actually true.
Right.
And there's so many amazing spiritual teachers that talk about this. But so what I find fascinating and how I connect with this phase that I see you going through, where you're now starting to get hate from the conservatives, it's hilarious because from the deeper spiritual perspective, you're going to piss off both sides.
Absolutely.
Because on one day, truth is going to be highlighted, and you're going to use that truth to ask critical questions of the left and of that whole leftist Marxist agenda. And then you're going to get hate from the left, but you're going to get love from the right. And then a day or a week or a year later, you're going to use the same toolkit to now show how something on the right is actually limiting and all of that. And now you're going to get hate from the right and love from the left. And so the real spiritual thing is to step out of all of that, to realize that this left and right thing is really just a divide and conquer. And it divide and conquers society, but it specifically divides your own inner being, and it conquers you. You now are on one side or the other. You're caught in the game of black and white, as Alan Watts would say. So I wanted to bring that up to kind of hear this part of your journey, because I know that this has been going on for you in just like the last week or two.
Yeah, just
so
the last
what has
week.
been happening for you as you're now like starting to feel some of this pushback?
It's crazy. Well, because one, I have been distrusting of Trump since I went to the rally. You know, I supported him through the impeachment, and then realized right after the impeachment, this is political theater. You know, he's in on this. But I kind of kept it to myself. I never really even thought to talk about it, to be honest with you. I was just like, I love Trump supporters. Like, we have a lot in common, whatever. But it was when I posted my post about that there was going to be a cyber attack because the Great Reset, people like Klaus Schwab had warned us. All of these people that, you know, follow Q were commenting, and they were like, this is a good thing. It's finally happening. Trump's taking back office. And I was like, you guys know, like, blackouts and martial law aren't good things. Like, and they were like,
there's
but
no
it's the
good
art of
situation where martial law comes about.
none. But they comment, and they're like, no, you don't understand. It's the art of war. And I'm like, no, like, I've been down the Q rabbit hole enough. And like, I also just have common sense, like, that these are just not good things. And so I'm like, you guys are literally listening to someone from an anonymous message board. Like, but anyway, all I wrote was the cyber attack thing. All these people were commenting, and I responded to like one person, and I was like, Q is a psy-op. And all of a sudden I'm getting tagged in posts, being tagged in comments all over Instagram. Nina's a shill. She said Q's a psy-op. And I was like, I kind of just was like, what? Like, what? So it led me to thinking, all right, cool. Like, great. So I asked those questions, and I had people commenting, you know, like, they were like, we can hear you saying this. You sound like a brat. We picture you stomping your feet as you're saying it. Like, no, dude, like, I'm literally asking you because these are very valid questions. And I had people commenting these long answers, and I'd read them, and I'd be like, this is like incomprehensibly either one, stupid, or two, it's going to happen, but it's going to screw you, you know, like, which is what that was my point was, so in those replies, I realized that I had poked a beehive I didn't know existed. I had always heard people say, MAG is a cult, MAG is a cult. And for me, it was just like, I love my country. I'm always going to support making America and keeping America great. But when I saw this behavior firsthand, I was like, you're blindly following somebody. And for what I had already realized, like, this guy's not a good guy, Yeah. But it was everybody's responses, which made me realize, like, this is a big game. Like, this is a big game. And the people that have always praised me on this platform for every time I say question everything and everyone's like, yeah. And now I'm questioning Trump and everyone's like, how dare you? How dare you? You're a shill. You're paid opposition. And then everyone started calling me this kid, Dylan Wheeler, which he actually contacted me because there were so many people commenting my posts like, you're a shill, you're paid opposition, you're that Dylan Wheeler kid. This kid had a platform of 300,000 people, was mentioned by Q personally 4 times, and all of a sudden realized what he was doing was wrong, was led to follow Jesus, and was being told, like, you're black pilled, like, you're not giving a solution. And people tore him apart, like, as if he freaking, like, he described it as like kicking a newborn baby. Like, the reaction for it was so unproportionate, just like the left's hatred of Trump is so disproportionate. Like, it's manufactured. The pedestal of Trump is manufactured. The hatred of Trump is manufactured. So he reached out to me. I'm going to have him on my live stream on Instagram, but it just kind of made me realize, like, the right isn't tolerant. The left isn't tolerant. Human behavior is not a right and left paradigm. It just makes people feel better to think they're the tolerant ones because both sides think they're the tolerant one. But as soon as you ask a question, they say, shut up, get in line. Don't ask questions. And I'm not about that. So, like, I'm having all these people being like, you're dividing and you're fanning flames. And I'm like, listen, I'm thinking critically. The truth is divisive. And all these Christians are like, well, we're called to shine light. I'm like, yeah, but also into the darkness. You guys are being deceived. And at the end times, Jesus says, don't let anyone deceive you. And this man is a master deceiver, Donald Trump. He's a master freaking deceiver. So of course I'm going to come public, and you can move me down to 800 followers again, and I'll sleep with the fan on high and the curtains closed. I will be fine because I believe in this. And, like, it's really just funny for all these people who were like, we love the way you think outside of the box. And now that I'm not in their box, they hate me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yet you're just asking those deeper questions. And I think it's so true because I don't think I followed QAnon as much as you are aware of it. I felt it was almost like the same thing as flat Earth. What I felt early on with the flat Earth thing was that I don't have, like, let me just say it transparently. In my heart, I genuinely feel that the flat Earth idea was initiated by the same controllers that spread lies all the time. And they use this as a way of discrediting people. Because if you think about the mind of a liar, they can't just tell one lie to cover the truth. They have to tell 12 different lies in order to cover all of their bases. And so one of the lies, one of the tactics of these liars that I see is that they create these like pit holes, these rabbit holes or whatever, that they can then use to discredit you as you are finding out some truth. If they can get you into this hole, then they can now discredit you. So, like, I was telling my girlfriend last night that, like, if you think of the mind of a liar, the first thing they'll do is they'll put out one major lie that is intended to get the masses on board. Then they put out other smaller lies that are designed to hopefully get the rest of the people on board. But then I believe they also put out these traps. And I think that Flat Earth and some of QAnon is one of these traps, where now as you're starting to realize, like, let's just take the subject of hydroxychloroquine. When those doctors came out and started showing their science and their independent data, if you're now a person that's like, look at this information, but then somehow you've also gotten coerced into thinking about flat Earth. Now they don't have to debate you on the truth that you've identified of this hydroxychloroquine stuff. They can just say, oh, but that person believes in flat Earth, or that person follows QAnon. So it becomes these ways that they end up discrediting people. And that's what I've seen with the QAnon narrative for quite a while.
Yeah, well, so I actually would take it a step deeper. I personally, for me, I'm going to say, I don't know if the earth is flat or not. The Bible actually makes it pretty clear that it's not what we think it is. It's not some globe. I mean, it says the earth's on pillars. So, and it says that there's a firmament over the sky. So I'm like, there's all these points that I don't know enough to draw a conclusion. I stay out of it, But as far as Q, you know what? The thing is that's the thing is Q's like, well, we need misinformation and blah, blah, blah. But I just came across a comic yesterday that is from 1990. It's from Heavy Metal Magazine, and it shows the rise of Trump, the crash of the Twin Towers, the opioid crisis, Trump building the wall, the rioting and the police brutality. And it actually shows the fall of Trump and how Trump kind of has to go underground for a little bit. But he has this plan to reemerge victoriously, and it shows the MAGA hats. So I see this and I'm like, Trump could reemerge just as exactly as Q's claiming he's going to. He could. But if he does, this was planned, and he's not coming back as the hero. He's coming back in the name of peace, and he's going to screw you. You should see the comic.
Yeah.
Wow. What's it called?
It's called The Wall by Peter Cooper. And it's in the 1990 edition of Heavy Metal Magazine.
Oh.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I at least love the fact that if there's an idea that might go against the mainstream, I've been down flat Earth, I've been down Bigfoot, I've done the aliens, I have done hollow Earth, I have done anything and everything you can possibly imagine. I have at least sat with myself and thought, what do I think about this? I don't want to know what anybody else thinks. What is my spirit? What is telling me the truth?
Right.
And so that is the only thing I'm concerned with is, if I'm in a good relationship and I meditate and I pray every single day, some days I don't, but most of the time I do. I feel like I'm kind of tapped in. If I love God, if I love people, if I'm loving nature, if I get a spark to explore something, I'm going to explore it. And I do the same thing. I kind of sit with it by myself for a little bit, and then it becomes a position. It either becomes part of my identity, like who I am, or I just kind of let it go back out into the ocean of thoughts. And at least I know a little bit about it to talk about it. But I love this idea of like, you know what? We don't know everything. Who are we? We are like tiny ants on planet Earth trying to figure, we do matter. Our existence does matter. And so our thoughts and our ideas should be shared, but there's truth in the thoughts and those ideas. To my extent, I love the Tao, and I know you love Krishnamurti, and how am I butchering his name?
Krishnamurti.
Morty.
Krishnamurti.
He's a good-looking guy. I know a picture of what he looks like.
Yeah.
Older Indian guy, but I
Good
wanted
faces, not names.
Yeah.
exactly. I wanted to say something about chapter 66. Out of the Tao, because it reminds me of like, if we see certain political powers or corporations or anything taking like these huge stands, why should we not trust them? And I think there's some ancient, deep knowledge that does exist in our world that we can hold in our hearts and say, okay, this is my toolkit, and now I get to intuitively decide if I want to follow that or not. But this is a really short passage out of the Tao. And again, it's chapter 66. And it said, all streams flow into the sea because it's lower than they are. Humility gives it its power. If you want to govern the people, you must place yourself below them. And so for me, like, all streams flow to the sea because it's lower than them. Who do we have in politics or in corporations that sits lower than the people themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't have a lot of humility in those circles.
Right.
Good point. It's a really good point.
I hear you. Yeah.
Man.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so perfect. I don't know what to say.
I don't disagree.
Honestly, like when the whole like Biden or Trump thing actually just gets, I have so many friends now that because I'm not liberal to them, they think I'm just automatically conservative. And they're like, oh, well, you should read this article. It's in that conservative magazine. And I'm thinking, when are you going to get that I'm not in either one of those camps at all?
Yep. Exactly.
I'm just out here journeying. That's it.
I hold extremely conservative values. Like I think that they mostly, my opinion, mirror, what God has called us to, and who he's called us to be, what the Bible says. I have very conservative values. I think they make the world more free. I think they make the world good. But as far as like I'm not dedicated to the system like I was, like I can hold the values and be separate from the system.
Absolutely.
And then people are like, you're paid, you're a shill. And it's like, no, dude, I'm just not, I'm free. I'm free.
What I see in what you're saying, how I identify with it is that there is a very clear difference between being associated by proxy, meaning that I hold these values for freedom and for, sovereignty and believing that it's just me and the creator as far as the hierarchy of life. And so that may have a crossover with a conservative ideology, but there's a major difference between it just being in a similar circle to this is the center of my identity.
Yeah.
And I think it's that type of position that is really negative and doesn't help and is part of the divide and conquer thing. If your identity is wrapped up in I am a Trump supporter and I am a conservative, if that's your identity, I honestly think it's just as bad as if your identity is, oh, I'm totally on board with the whole left-wing agenda as well.
Yes.
It's like
it's the same thing.
Yeah, all of this is just a chess game, and now you're getting on the chessboard.
It's a chess game.
You got to
get
off
where you're
the chessboard.
pitted against each other while thinking like you're the good guy. And I do agree that conservative values far superior to leftist values, but you're being played by the system.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's like, and people want to label that as black-pilled and being hopeless. And it's just like, man, I'm just here in reality. You do you. Just don't
hate those labels.
Drag me down with you.
Oh, yeah.
I was told, like, I was talking the other day and someone was like, don't be black-pilled. And I'm like, don't call me a black pill. Like, that's not what I'm.
That's racist.
Not what I
am. Exactly.
Like, that's not nice. Don't say that. So,
totally.
yeah.
The thing too is with the whole patriot movement, like I was so on board with that because I'm like, our founding fathers and look what they stood for. And I'm not against that, but I'm also like, if it causes me to have this label of like, I'm black pilled, but can't be a patriot, then count me out because I'm not dedicated to a label. I see what I see. Both parties are guilty of trying to squash people into this groupthink mentality, and I'm not with it. Like
totally.
All 14,000 of my followers can leave. I'm not with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, good for you.
I love that. Nina, you're an amazing human being, and we're so stoked that you came on the podcast today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you.
Yeah, where can people find you? On Instagram, I know you're super active.
Yeah.
What's your Instagram?
My Instagram is Nina L. Leone, so NinaLleone. And then I have Telegram, but I have a link tree in my bio on Instagram with all my other social media.
That's dope. Yeah,
Awesome.
If you've enjoyed this conversation out there, go give Lena a follow and scroll back through her Instagram because I'm telling you, she's got some really amazing posts and you're just such an articulate human being that it's been such a wonderful conversation. I love what you've been putting out into the world for the last 9 months or so.
Yeah. Thank you. 6 months. Only 6 months.
That's crazy. It honestly feels like it's been so long that I've been watching.
I know. And this is the hard part of the journey starting right now, but I'll be fine. We'll be good.
You're doing amazing and you have a lot of support. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, both of you.
Totally. Well, yeah, we'll have to have you back on at some point in the future.
Oh yeah.
We got so much more that we could talk about. So
Oh yeah.
And watch those movies.
Yes.
Oh, I will. And also, send me the link to this so I can share it as well.
We will.
Awesome.
We definitely will. So, all right, everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to get in touch with us and ask us questions or give us your thoughts on this episode or other episodes, you can reach us at therememberingpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find us on Instagram at The Remembering Podcast. So we'll be back with a new episode in about 2 weeks. And until we see you then, have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.